This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 31. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Turbo Penguin.
Happy pre-Friday to you, Turbo. So today's been an interesting Thursday. We got a lot of news about a very certain company that released the embargo on the reviews for a certain card. How's it looking?
In the right context, good.
Good. I mean, yeah, I was looking through the mostly the Jay's 2 cents and Gamers Nexus videos that they did covering the B580, and I think for this being Intel's second generation card, I want to call this a win for them.
Look, I think in the context of, I think there's a lot of positive things. Okay. I think timing for Intel is super important. Coming out when nobody else has anything new coming out is going to bring some excitement that might have been otherwise hidden. Yeah. I think coming at a price point that nobody really has. I mean, that's the thing we got to keep in mind. We're comparing a new graphics card architecture to low end, current gen, and last gen.
Yep.
On both sides of this. And so I think it's just for people to realize that it's good. I don't think it's great. I think it depends on how you're looking at it. For gamers, yeah. I think this is good for gamers because I really think that when it's all said and done, I think it's going to make it does have, at least at a price point, pause for question on pricing. I think both AMD and NVIDIA both are going to now question pricing on the low end. Do I think that 250 is going to be a price point that maybe they might have a video card at? Possible. I don't know. I mean, AMD is only really going to have two cards. It's going to have the 8800 and the 8600.
Yeah. And I don't see them pushing the 8600 below 300.
The only way I think they could do that. Well, okay. I think the question is where does the 8600 compare to this?
Right.
And I think that a lot of the push comes to shove is that they'll say, hey, we've got awesome rasterization and we're faster, and it'll probably slot in the $300 price point.
Yeah.
Okay. If they were trying to slot that at 350, that might cause them to question it and keep it at 315, depending on what the performance is. Now, that I think that's a loaded question. I don't think NVIDIA is going to have a card at this price point, except for 40 series cards.
Yeah.
I think you could probably see 4060s at that 250 price point.
Yep.
But I think that both AMD and NVIDIA are going to look at this and be like, it's a price point that we don't really have. We've never really had. I don't know if there's because here's the question. If I gave you an extra, 15% performance for $50, I think a lot of gamers would pay $50 for 15% faster, especially for something that you don't necessarily get to replace every couple of, months.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I one of the things right now that NVIDIA has on the market, because the prime comparison point, I think, is the 3060 12 gig and the 4060 8 gig and 4060 Ti 8 gig. In the current generation, NVIDIA doesn't really have a card in that performance bracket that has the same VRAM, with the exception of the 3060 12 gig. They downgraded the 4060, which ticked off a lot of people that buy that class of card. And I think the benchmarks show that, they should have been pissed because the 4060 is a far more efficient GPU than the 3060, but it just can't push out the frames because it doesn't have the VRAM. And so, Intel's like, hey, we're competing with NVIDIA on performance, and we've got ray tracing, and we've got the 12 gig. And, you know, Intel's coming out right before Christmas when people are potentially going to be buying new hardware. Um, and they're coming out at a very, I think, competitive price point for this class of GPU, where nobody has really served for the last 5, 6, 7 years, with anything that's respectable. I mean, you got the 3050, and I don't think they even came out with a 4050, but
No, they didn't.
it's just it it doesn't really have any solid competition in the class if you're looking at 1440p gaming, even on medium or low settings, and in some cases it actually did okay on high settings too. Which,
Look,
yeah,
I think it's a good step for Intel. I
mm-hmm,
think it shows that XE2 was a formidable upgrade
yep,
compared to XE1. Um, I think it's a stepping stone, sure, in
yeah,
the right direction.
yep,
Um, I think it puts them into a class that's actually competitive. They're
yes,
competitive with a card that people actually want to buy. And if anything other than proving that they can do it, maybe that's a good thing for them internally. Do I think they're going to sell tons and tons of these cards? And do I think this is going to be a high percentage usage on the Steam survey? Mm, Probably not.
no,
But I believe it's going to give them some positive momentum.
mm-hmm,
I think that's super good. I really think that had they had a 7 series that came out that competed at like the 4070 Ti, 4080 performance bracket, I think there would be a lot more excitement about ARC.
mm-hmm,
I think the missed opportunity here is to have a faster, higher up the food chain queue and or card in the queue. And I don't know. I mean, somewhere along the lines, you have to make a business decision, and I can appreciate that. But when it all comes down to it, I still think it's positive. I
yeah,
see where they
I
could have
agree.
maybe done better. I still think that they can maybe push out some improvements. I think the real question that I have is this: the release that we have today, if we're at this performance here with driver updates, do we see it go up over time, stay the same, or maybe come down? I, for me, I think that's a huge benefit, a huge pro for me,
Yeah,
because I want to be able to find something that they're consistently fine tuning. And I will say, if I hear that Intel um, drops and kills off ARC, I would be wildly pissed off if I was a ARC buyer,
yeah,
because part of me looks at this and I say it's a success from a review perspective. I don't know if Intel Upper will see this as a success. And the only reason I think they won't see this as a success, I don't think they're going to sell a ton of them.
yeah. Well,
I
I
think they'll
think,
sell more than the A series.
yeah, for sure.
I
I
don't think they're going to sell large volumes.
I think the majority of the sales we're probably going to see are not going to be to enthusiast builders like you and me building a system for family member or whatever. I think a lot of people are going to end up buying them through OEMs. I think this card is going to probably be the one because Intel is very, very good at integrating with OEMs. And if they can get Dell or Alienware or, whoever else is out
Look,
there that building systems that people are buying.
but that's going to get people to buy a gaming computer with an Intel graphics card.
Yep.
And because right now I would put money that if you had a 4060, if you had 3 Dell machines,
Mm-hmm.
all with the same specs minus your graphics card, and you had a 4060, 4060, a 7600 XT, and an Intel B580.
Yeah.
I bet you it's like 10-1 NVIDIA to Intel.
Maybe because of the brand recognition, but
Oh,
here's what
for
I see.
sure.
The game Intel likes to play is bundling. Because one of the things they will do is say, well, hey, for this model of machine, we'll give you the graphics cards for $100. You can mark up the system to the $200, or you could just, not charge that and move more volume. And that's of course assuming Intel could sell volumes of cards and make money at that. But, Intel is known to do that. And I
get
think
it
that's
comes
going to
to
be,
sales.
yeah,
You can give me a deal all day long. A deal is only worth something if I can sell it.
right.
I mean, if I'm selling you, I'm saying, hey, I've got a really good deal on some rock. If I can't sell rock, then that's not a good deal.
True.
And,
Well,
and
in this
so,
case, we're selling sand, but yeah,
but that's
that's
what
the
I'm
thing.
getting at. I question, from an OEM perspective, the first gen ARC was lackluster. The
Very much so.
second gen
Yeah.
has some selling points, and I think it's a positive thing, but I wouldn't say it's a home run. I would say it's probably a double, right?
Yeah,
It's a
I
step in
wouldn't.
the right direction, but it's not going to get you points on the board. And I think that might be where Intel kind of struggles here, because I question how this is going to sell, because I
Yeah.
think DIY people maybe at this price point, but
Mhm.
if I'm really looking at a $250 card, the question is like, am I competing against used cards? Very, very
Very much so.
possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
because
if you're in our kind of market, yes. But what I'm thinking is at the Best Buys and the micro centers where you'll have a Dell with the Intel 285K in 3 different machines, otherwise identical. One's got a 7600. Actually, I don't know if Dell does AMD cards. They might. For sake of argument, three otherwise identical machines, same memory, same everything. 285K with a 7600, 285K with a 4060, and a 285K with an ARC. All 3 running the demos. If they sell the 7600 and the 460 for the same price, and the ARC is $50 cheaper or $100 cheaper, and it plays games the same, it runs the exact same demos, everything looks largely the same, frame rates are pretty much indistinguishable at that level. I think a lot of people are going to be like, I'll save the $100. I'll go buy another SSD. What the heck? And, for the average consumer. And that's what this market really is for. It's not for us where we're like, look, I want to get 200 frames per second playing Fortnite at triple wide 4K. It's for, well, Johnny needs a new computer to do homework and he kind of does like playing Fortnite. So,
great. So
this one's $100
so
cheaper.
we're expecting moms to be the one to be like this, and the kids get it and they're like, oh, it's got Intel graphics. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, but that's the thing is like, oh, it's got Intel graphics, could at that point potentially turn into, oh, it's got Intel graphics. To be perfectly honest, for myself, I'm potentially going to be building a machine for my second office in Mom's basement, and
This lives in Mom's basement.
I visit Mom's basement and work remotely from Mom's basement. Yeah, that's where we were for our Thanksgiving episode.
Nerd.
And so,
I'm sorry. Did I say something?
my laptop is kind of long in the tooth, and you're just spitting facts. It's all good. My laptop's getting long in the tooth, and having an actual desktop system physically there, so I don't have to cart all the gear back and forth, I think would be pretty nice. And to be perfectly honest, for that use case, I think the Intel
I
card
mean,
is
look,
looking good for
I
me.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I
No,
think it has a use case.
yeah,
Do I think it wins in every aspect of the use case?
no,
No. Do I think it's necessarily bad in its use case? No. Um, I just think, when it's all said and done, I think most gamers are going to look at that and be like, well, it looks good. They're not going to buy it. I think
yeah,
people who are needing a video card are going to say, that's nice. When's the 50 series coming out?
yeah. Well, and that's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
that's what's going on, and I think that's what's expected. Now, I think that this launch is hugely beneficial for Intel to
Agreed.
say that was good. Now, the question is with XE3, you got to get a card that's in the that's in the entry level and the mid range. I do not think you need to compete on the high end. In fact, I would say you don't have to compete at the high end.
Right.
Okay, but you know, I really think that you got to get out of comparing yourself to a 4060 and get yourself into something a little bit up the range. Now that
Yeah.
means that you're going to have to put more money and effort into those other, the XE3 is going to have a performance boost because, you were comparing it to a 4060, not a
Yeah.
5060. So now when you come out, and maybe it's good that Intel's kind of offset on the time frames of when they come out. Maybe that's their goal.
Hmm.
But eventually you're gonna have to start playing with the big boys.
Well, yeah, and I think part of the reason we're looking at only getting low end cards from XE2 is kind of along the same lines of what we saw with RDNA 4, where AMD's like, we're not going to do a 90 card. We're just going to do the 88 and the 86. That's it. Um, I think it's because they realize as they're working on XE2 and getting it finalized, they've got XE3 pretty much done. And they're like, okay, let's just pour, instead of doing a big XE2, let's pour all our resources in XE3. I would not be one bit surprised if we see a competitor for the 4070 or the 8600 coming out in the XE3 release. But to your point, right now, because of where they're releasing, they're functionally a generation behind. They're releasing in time to compete with the 50 series cards and the RDNA 4 cards. And I think in a month we're going to see a lot of the reviews changing, or at least the thoughts on the 580 changing, because oh well, now you got to compare it to a 50 series, and I don't think it's going to do particularly well unless Nvidia does something like they did with the 40 series and gimp the 60 card with less VRAM and poor memory bandwidth. I mean, I think the 4060s all shipped with by 8 PCI Express
Uh,
instead of by 16. So,
I
you
just
know,
don't know if AMD or if because let's be honest here at the low end, you're starting to see more competition. Okay. AMD's bread and butter has always been entry level to mid game to medium upper. I would say upper, but not
yeah,
like ultimate graphics.
bouncing off the
Um,
bottom of the high end. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would never say that they've ever had a 90 series true competitor. I mean, the
I'd say the
7900
last,
XT was a
yeah.
good card, but when you compared it to a 4090, it
Hmm.
was not a 4090 competitor. I don't think that we're going to see something from them from a bit. Um, but the question is now that everyone moves up, and if AMD has got their ray tracing stuff sorted off, you know can Intel match the next gen with next gen? And
Yeah.
I think that's really where it comes down to, because I think the concern that I have with Intel on graphics, if you're always comparing yourself to the bottom of last gen,
Yeah.
you're
You're going to
never
fall off the
current.
bottom of next.
And everyone's going to think that and the problem is eventually you got to get out of that.
Yep.
So at one point you have to come in and be like, yeah, I'm better than bottom gen of last gen, day late and a dollar short.
Yeah.
They're they're 30 days away from being a gen behind.
Yeah.
I don't
Again,
know if
well, at
that's
least,
necessarily a huge positive for them.
yeah. I mean, at the very least, they're not releasing parts that are designed to compete with last gen after the release of the current gen. So give them a little bit of credit there, but like you said, they're still behind. And, that also I think is potentially why we didn't see a big XE2. Because they're like, well, okay, we can't really say we're going to be able to compete with a 50 series or RDNA 4, so let's just do the best we can with the low end stuff and pour everything into XE3. And I think, that business decision makes a lot of sense. Just like I think the AMD's move with RDNA 4 makes a lot of sense. And, I think this generation, because usually every generation or so, every other generation, we kind of have a meh release. The 2080 Ti was kind of meh compared to the 4080 because literally all it added was ray tracing. You got very little rasterization improvement. There was some, but not a huge quantity. And, you know, I kind of feel like 50 series is going to be the same way, and RDNA 4 is going to be a bigger leap for AMD because the 7000 series was kind of a meh upgrade from the 6000 series. I mean, yeah, it was tempting to go there because it had better ray tracing, but that was about it. And, I kind of hope that Intel is going to be able to capitalize on this and move forward with it instead of, getting this whole project canned. Because anytime you look at the business model of these companies, having more competition always works out better in our favor. You know,
I'm not upset
yeah,
about this. I
yeah,
do believe that this is a positive launch. I just at the end of the day, I question if and how competitive and how profitable this will be for Intel
yeah,
at $250. And I don't know, but this is not a small die when it comes to silicon.
true.
Okay, um, it's not free, and you're still putting RAM, you're still putting R&D into it, and I question if Intel is making money now. um Businesses will choose on product lines to lose money,
Hmm.
and that's fine. I think that I could see the use case for that. But when it's all said and done, is this going to be enough to keep ARC moving forward, or does upper management look at this and be like, yes, we're losing too much money, we're done? I
Well,
don't know. I don't know
yeah,
the answer to that.
I think that's entirely possible too, and it may not even be ARC that's the problem in that calculus. It may be that, well, we lost X billion dollars on 13th and 14th gen failures, so sorry, ARC, we have to cut you. And I genuinely hope that's not the case because this is what I was begging for when I worked for Intel as a contractor. And, like I said, I sent an email to Brian Krasanich and I'm like, dude, with what I see we're doing with processor graphics on Haswell, can we please make a card? Give it 200, give it 150 watts, give it 200 watts instead of limiting it to the 40 or 65 watts shared with the CPU. Let's give it some real power and show what graphics can actually do. And it fell on deaf ears. And I think part of
Lou
that was
Seliger
because,
works at Intel.
well, yeah, exactly. Which was a very good thing. Yeah. Anyway, on that bombshell, I think we're going to wrap it up here
Yep.
for this evening. And thank you all for watching. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of your day to share our thoughts on technology. And while you're here, remember to like and subscribe and do all the algorithmic pleasing things down in the doobly-doo down below, off to the side, and all that fun stuff too. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Ice igloo.
Ice
We just storm the ice igloo.
Oh, okay. We could storm that.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.